In this video, we're going to check out Tomb Blades and Necron Destroyers. Scifiwargamers, helping you explore the hobby. Greetings hobby fans, my name's Marcel and it's my mission to help you explore the hobby. So today we're looking at those weird Necron floating contraptions, Tomb Blades and Necron Destroyers, the weird ones with a body that just floats. They don't have legs, they just have a floating bit, because legs are too slow. Anyway, let's get on with it. Necron Tomb Blades. The Tomb Blade was originally designed as a space fighter during the final days of the War in Heaven. As Necrons' robotic bodies are immune to the hazards of interplanetary space, traditional pressure-sealed and canopied craft were unnecessary from the very outset. Acting in swarms that were dozens or even hundreds strong, Tomb Blades would swarm over enemy capital ships, overwhelming armour and weapon systems, with waves of pinpoint Gauss and Tesla fire. So successfully did the craft perform in its primary environment that modified versions soon appeared in planet-side battles, one of the few occasions in which the hidebound traditions of the Necron military were adapted to better exploit emergent opportunity. The Tomb Blade has a curious motion for a craft of its design, eschewing the arrow-straight attack vectors of other jetbites and fighter craft. The Tomb Blade's dimensional repulsor engines ensure that gravity, momentum, and other forces have little purchase upon its frame. As a result, the craft often corkscrews across the battlefield rather than taking a more direct approach, and constantly changes vector and altitude in a manner fit to boggle the enemy's aim. No flesh and blood pilot could ever hope to contend with such an anarchic approach without succumbing to blackouts and nausea, but such hazards have no hold over machines. Despite appearances to the contrary, the attack patterns performed by Tomb Blades are strictly controlled by a series of hyperfractal equations. Indeed, they have to be, for a Necron warrior alone would make for a truly dreadful pilot. To compensate for this, attack patterns are entirely pre-planned and the pilot cannot alter them once in flight, though it can switch between different tactical packages in order to adapt to fresh objectives. The pre-programmed nature of a Tomb Blade's flight means that it is therefore theoretically possible to predict the flight path it will take, but only a genius-level intellect could divine that there was a pattern at all. Even if said genius could isolate and identify the particular set of equations in use, no conventional targeting computer could ever hope to process the data fast enough to be of any use. Thus, a Tomb Blade is just as difficult a quarry as the most accomplished of all mortals, even though its pilot skill is immensely inferior. Tomb Blades often operate far ahead of the main army, striking at lightly defended positions, supply convoys, and other targets of opportunity. Though the planet-side craft do not mount the starship-busting weaponry of the spacefighter variants, the twin-linked Tesla carbines and Gauss blasters can prove just as devastating when employed against advancing infantry. Such is the Tomb Blade's unpredictable advance that the piercing whine of its dimensional repulsors is often the only clue to its approach. At that point, astute enemies dive for any cover they can find. The others disintegrate as the air around them explodes in a blaze of unstable energy. Those Tomb Blades are very interesting. I don't like the idea of not actually being in control of it. Anyway, let's have a look at a Necron Destroyer. Necron Destroyers. Destroyers are the deranged agents of annihilation whose sole reason for existence is centered around an unshakable yearning to quench the flames of life. A destroyer cares not for borders or allegiance, nor does he make any distinction between the innocent and the damned. All life is his enemy, and all living creatures are his prey. It is not the Destroyer's violent madness alone that makes them so different from the other denizens of a tomb world. Insanity infects many a slumbering Necron, though it rarely takes a dramatic form, but instead merely exacerbates the victim's innate eccentricities. Yet, even the lowliest Necron warrior longs for a return to the time of flesh, and because its physical form is all that now echoes the living, breathing, soulful creature it once was, it will under no circumstances tolerate further dilution or corruption of that physical form. Instead, for a destroyer, everything is subsumed into the all-important goal of annihilation. They ruthlessly adapt, augment, or expunge any facet of their physical form if it will improve their mission of slaughter. Legs are removed in favour of repulsor platforms. Arms are fused to the workings of Gauss cannons. Even the destroyer's sensors are reconfigured to better serve target lock and prediction capability. Its neural circuitry repathed to improve response times at the cost of vestigial emotions. None of this is to say that destroyers do not feel fear, though they might explain a retreat away as conserving resources. It is a retreat nonetheless, spurred on by a spark of self-preservation that will never quite be extinguished. What makes the rise of the destroyers truly disturbing is that they can be found on almost every tomb world, from the poorest fringe world to the noblest of crown worlds. This suggests that the descent into this particular form of madness is driven by subconscious imperative, possibly one implanted by the Catan during biotransference. This does not mean that destroyers hail from every level of Necron society. It takes a certain freedom of personality to embrace nihilism with such cold-blooded determination, a level of individuality denied to low-ranking Necrons. Destroyers, therefore, almost without exception, emerge from the ranks of Immortals, Lich-Guard, and occasionally Deathmarks. Most are banished to the outskirts of their tomb world, dwelling in isolated fortresses ruled over by courts of destroyer lords. A destroyer's chilling dedication to destruction is a valuable addition to any Necron army. On most campaigns, their brutal efficiency more than compensates for the almost habitual insubordination with which they treat other Necrons of all ranks. The canniest and most thorough Nemesaurs make a direct point of building campaigns around the actions of destroyers, rather than making doomed attempts to enforce their own battle plan on the twisted warriors. So long as a destroyer knows that there are other forms of life in the vicinity, it will direct its baleful attention upon their destruction, and has no intellect or focus to spare for such irrelevancies as orders and strategy. Once the enemy is in sight, destroyers pay little or no heed to their allies, but instead settle into optimized and self-sufficient extermination patterns, shattering enemy formations with long-range salvos of Gauss fire before moving into point-blank range to methodically scour survivors from the blackened craters.
Well, you certainly wouldn't want to be in the firing line when there's a destroyer floating around, would you? Anyway, out of the two units, which do you guys think is the better unit, the destroyer or the tomb blade? I myself would probably go with the destroyer as a unit. However, I feel the tomb blades probably are a little cooler. So if we were going rule of cool, we'd go with the tomb blade. If we were going WAC, WAAC, we would go with the destroyer perhaps. However, I haven't actually looked into the rules, so I'm assuming and therefore probably looking a bit of an idiot. Anyway, I want to know what you guys think, so let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more Necron lore, you can check out the playlist up here somewhere. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. You can even support the channel on our Patreon page, the link to which is in the description below. Thank you very much for watching, and always remember to drill your barrels.